surface of the Earth. So I got interested when I saw that. So I got the astronomy books out, and we can now go to number 39. And most people don't realise that the actual gravity centre, or what they call the barycenter, that's the centre where the Moon and the Earth rotate around each other as they're going through the orbit. The Earth's actually going through space like this, on a slow wobble as it goes around, and it's the Earth orbit. And I took the values out of the astronomy books and again turned them into geometric measurement of 1 minute of arc on the Earth's surface, and calculated the distances from the centre of the Earth to the barycenter, then from there to the surface. And again, when I took the 915 from the 2522, as you see, we go through the same process. As I said yesterday, if you want to increase or decrease the harmonic, in other words, either lengthen the waveform or increase it, you either multiply or divide by 6 to shift it up or down the scale. Well, if we do that with that difference, we again get 69444. So we're coming back again every time to the reciprocal of the speed of light in those tables I showed you. And that will be then traced back to the gravitational effect in the beginning of the table. So it appears that all these things are all sort of based on universal harmonics directly related with light. And if we know now to number 40, now this is something that you'll be able to find in the astronomy books. If you look up the section on the Moon and find the diameter of the Moon, which it gives in the astronomy books in relation to its orbit, what I've done there, I've again changed the mean orbit distance around the periphery, and then I've divided it by that gravitational harmonic, 695.45, I showed on the table yesterday. We end up with the diameter of the Moon, which is right on the diameter given in the astronomy books. But that again is taken from the value on the Earth's surface. It's pretty accurate to the textbook figure. Textbook figure is 3475.9 plus or minus a fraction, because the Moon is not a perfect circle either, it's got a bulge in it. This is from Larousse Astronomy, and we're looking at the inclination of the Moon, the axis of rotation, and the mean average distance from the surface of the Earth to the surface of the Moon. If we look at the first one there, that's the average inclination of the Moon's orbit from elliptic is equal to 5.1453 degrees. This varies by 0.3 degrees around its average value for the period of 173 days. Now if we take that value off 90 degrees, we get 84.8547 degrees, which equals 5091.282 minutes of arc. Well, in the polar segments of that grid I've showed you, the distance from corner to corner is 5091.116. And you only got to correct that fractionally, and you'll get 2545.5844 again, that harmonic that's directly related to the Earth's magnetic field. So all the little bits on the Moon and all the parameters seem to be very, very close to all those harmonic figures. Now if we go to the axis of rotation, it's in the middle of the page there, you square that and you get 6941, which is close to the 6944 thing. It seems to be popping up all the time. Now the mean average distance from the surface of the Earth to the surface of the Moon, it's given in minutes of arc there, this transposed. And we come back from there to 1694.786. Now there's a slight variation movement in the orbit, so 1 or 2 times during its orbit that will be exactly 16944, and I'm pretty sure if they picked those times, well, they'd have direct communication between the Earth and the Moon, because that is a communications frequency that's being used secretly by the scientists. Now can anybody see the anomaly there? There's something not quite right. The computer's, I think, is telling me. I don't feel easy about it because I should not be able to calculate that using the parameters on the Earth's surface. if I wanted to check the harmonics of the moon area, I should have to use 1 minute of arc on the moon surface. It's almost saying the moon is artificial. There's something funny there. I can't figure that one out. So we'll have to wait now to get some more information and see if there's anything going on up there. But there has been other information come through various publications. When they had the astronauts going up there, they after they had some of the hardware still left in moon orbit, they crashed it onto the moon, and they had instruments on the moon to see what the sort of vibration rate of the moon was on the surface. And evidently, instead of just vibrating and dying out quickly as I expected, it kept sort of ringing like a bell for 24 hours. And they said that the speed of transmission through the surface, or just under the surface of the moon, was about the same as you'd expect to go through iron, which again was a bit strange. They haven't answered that one either. So there's a lot of strange things about the moon that we're not sure of. And another thing, in astronomy books, if you check, you find that there's not one astronomer that will give you a clear reason why the moon is, or why it's there in the first place. There's 3 different theories, and I'm not sure which one's right or whether any of them are right. They say if it was a captured body, the moon should have an elliptical orbit, but it hasn't. It's almost circular. And there's I forget what the 3 theories are, but there's definitely 3 different sort of theories in the astronomy books, and they don't add up. And there's something strange even to the astronomers that they can't answer. So we'll have to wait to see what the answer is. Rightio, we're going to Mars. Yesterday, Stan showed you that segment on the area in Sedona and Mars. They have they call the face on Mars. And that's definitely there. It's been photographed by NASA. But in that area where the pyramids are, well, I've got a nuclear physicist friend in England, and he sent me, the scientist sent this information to me because he noticed in this analysis they did of the pyramid, the geometric analysis, that that reciprocal figure of the speed of light, 694, was in their analysis in that pyramid on Mars. See this actual value here. That one there? That's that angle. And that value there is the half that harmonic, 347 or 34722 it would be if it was very accurate. And the top, outside, where that's got 2 faces at the top there, that angle, outside angle, will give you 144 in seconds. Seconds at 144 harmonic, which is a reciprocal of that 694 in the middle. And they give the actual latitude of the pyramid. If we come to this area, see where this is the communications one they use. It's right in the middle of the, from the Earth's magnetic field up to the gravity factors here. Now, if we work from the speed of light factor at that latitude on Mars, we can work back the same way to find out what this value is here on the Martian latitude. What I've done, I've looked that latitude up on that full table I showed you at the latitude on the table, and calculated the speed of light value for that latitude. And the latitude on Mars is 40 degrees, 40.868 degrees latitude. So on this table, we take the 40 degrees and 868 we come across here, we can pick out the gravity values between there and 40.8, which will give us around these figures here. This will be the gravity one, and then the air, one for the vacuum, and then the maximum one. And the actual speed of light values for that latitude on the moon come to 143.466 for gravity, 143.535 for air, 143.566 for vacuum, and 143.675 for the maximum. Now, if we go through that other table, the antimatter table, up to that middle part, we get 1693.9, 1694.3, 1694.4, 169.1. So at the latitude that pyramid is, for the actual air on Mars, which is thinner than us, you'll pick out a 1.66944 value, which is communication. So I don't think anybody could tell me that's an accident, which proves fairly forcefully again that pyramid exists on Mars and was built there by some intelligence. We're probably some of their descendants. Now, has any of you heard about the Tesla car engine? Tesla actually built a car with an electric engine in it. This is in the early days. And to get some information on this, I had to send over to Germany for a book called Revolution in Technology in Medicine and Society, just to get one page about this car of Tesla's. And he built this electric engine in a Pierce Arrow car, and he was getting about 90 miles an hour out of the thing. But the thing was, he was getting the energy directly out of the atmosphere, just like Murray did, that Stan was talking about yesterday. But he called it a gravitational motor. He was actually tapping the gravitational energy. Well, if you think about that table then, with all the sort of calculations from gravity through to light and everything like that, well, that's what it was. He was tapping, and he must have had it tuned to that 143791 figure, the gravity figure. But it said the energy receiver gravitational energy converter had been built by Tesla himself. The dimensions of the converter housing were approximately 60 by 25 by 15 centimetres. It was installed in front of the dashboard. Among other things, the converter contained 12 vacuum tubes, of which 3 were the 70L7 type. A heavy antenna, approximately 1.8 metres long, came out of the converter. This antenna apparently had the same function as that on the Murray converter that Henry Murray was experimenting with. Furthermore, 2 thick rods protruded approximately 10 centimetres from the converter housing. And Tesla pushed them in, saying, "Now we have power." The motor achieved a maximum of 1800 RPM. Tesla said it was fairly hot when operating, therefore a cooling fan was necessary. For the rest, he said there was enough power in the converter to illuminate an entire house, besides running the car engine. The car was tested for a week, reaching a top speed of 90 miles per hour. So if you put number 50 on, you've got 50 there. Just out of curiosity, I took the 1.8 metres to see how close it was to any of these harmonics. And as you see there, it's only a fraction difference. And we again come back to the reciprocal of the speed of light harmonic, which will go through that table back to the gravity factors. So it was obvious, I think, that Tesla knew a lot more than everybody ever believed he did. He knew all this stuff, and he knew how to build things and operate, and but like everything else, they closed him up and he died a pauper. So we could have electric cars on the road right from way back, and you don't need anything else but a little thing like a radio box and an antenna, and you're away. And I don't take much if the finance was available to do all this all over again. But of course they won't allow that. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is the atomic bomb, number 51. I had a hunch that if my theories were right with the harmonic type of approach to things, then the harmonic bomb must logically have some sort of tie-in with that approach. And going back to Einstein, Einstein states that the whole of our physical reality is manifested by the geometrics of space and time. And if you think about this logically, if you want to disrupt matter or detonate it like an atomic bomb, logically you must use a geometric process. But you have to set up a process which is in reverse or in opposition to the normal process of matter production. So just out of curiosity, I started looking more closely at atom bomb tests. The first thing I did was to check where they actually let a bomb off, to see if there's any harmonics in the actual position of the bomb site. And that goes right back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What most people don't know, before they drop those bombs, they were pre-calculated about 9 months in advance. And that didn't matter because the Americans at the time were the only ones that had the secrets, or the only ones that could do this type of technology. So they could just wait for as long as they liked to work it all out first and then go over and drop the bombs when the time was right. And not only that, they picked the best bomb aimers, the best crews, and everything was the best. They had those crews out in the desert for 3 months dropping bombs into, I think it was 300-foot circles from 30,000 feet to get accuracy. And logically, that's not necessary. Just a normal crew should be able to drop a bomb over the side of an atomic bomb. It didn't have to be right square on the target, within 50 feet or 100 feet. Could have been anywhere over the city and it would have done the same job. But they had to have it accurate, and it was well timed, it had to be timed right. And this is all on public record, but you've got to put all the little bits together. And they had to be over the site at a certain point, and then they run in from that point and timing it to the fraction of a second all the way along. And what they actually did in the end was drop that bomb through a time zone. And I'll explain that more as I go along. But before that, just to show you that what I got hold of, it wasn't an accident. What happened to... I was under a cloud storm with the airline, and everybody was sort of against me. I'd been told I'd be sacked if I carried on and all sorts of things. So when I found this secret, I thought, well, there's only one thing I can do. So I found that I could pre-calculate bomb tests ahead up to about 2 or 3 weeks. And I just waited until the bomb went off, and I was usually within an hour of the actual detonation. And I let this be known, just sort of filtered around. And then I was eventually asked by government departments to do one for them. Well, what happened, I'd been asked to give a lecture at the Aeronautical Society in Auckland. And it happened that the president of the Aeronautical Society was the chief of the meteorological department in the government. And they took me out to dinner, and this came up about the bomb, and they were sort of laughing about it, and he said, oh, well, what about projecting one for us? And I said, well, I only know so much, but I'll try. So I did. I gave him some figures. This was about 3 weeks in advance, and with my fingers crossed, because I knew very little. I just knew enough of the method. And luckily, I pulled it off. And I wasn't very far out on the day. So I got a surprise when the chief put a rubber stamp on it and gave it back to me to allow me to have proof of it. And I was told afterwards that that had been sent off to 3 more government departments before the bomb went off. And since that time, I've had a lot of sort of help from behind the scenes, and my credibility flipped over the other side, and I've had a fairly lucky sort of a time since then. But how they can detonate a bomb, it took me weeks to sort of figure it all out. First of all, there was the bomb site. The actual position where they detonated the bomb had to be harmonically tuned, or harmonic point. The bomb itself, you can read that in any science magazine, the bomb is made geometrically. It's a geometric device. It's all very well worked out to very precisely. The actual size of the unstable material has to be a certain size and volume and everything else, and it's got to come together at the right time. And everything you look at about the bomb is all geometric. But there was one little bit that it took me a while to find out, and in the end I figured out it must have something to do with the geometrics of the solar system. Because if it appeared that the whole process was a process of relative motion. In other words, if you think of an atom with an electron spiraling around it, what you have to do is make that electron fly off at a tangent. So you've got to have all the different motions that affect the bomb at the instant of detonation all going in the right direction, so that that will cause, when they push it all together, will cause that electron to fly off at a tangent. We're just taking one atom. And I thought, well, the only thing I can look at is the position of the sun at the time of detonation. And if we take this as the actual Earth, and the sun's out here, well, you probably all know that the sun, in its orbit, it goes spiralling around from the north down to the south every 6 months. It goes up and down. It's spiralling from up in the area here, it spirals down, goes through the equator, and it's around here sometime. So if we say the atomic site is there, what I had to do was work out the geometric triangle, latitude and longitude between the points. Now, if we got the sun there, what happens, if you take this right from the sun, we imagine that's the centre of the Earth, it's all a long way, I don't know, but overhead sun, at the instant of detonation, if you take it through the point on the Earth's surface to the centre of the Earth, well, it gives you a point on the Earth's surface at that instant of time. Of course, that only happens once in that position every year, because the next revolution around the sun will be just down here fractionally, and as it goes down, the same thing here. So they've got to work out the bomb, the particular bomb they're detonating. It's all got to be tuned in. And I found that if I calculated that triangle, that's the latitude of the bomb site, that's the longitude going up to the sun site. So you've got a perfect spherical triangle on the Earth's surface. And after checking back on bomb tests, I managed to find out that these actual distances in minutes of arc were harmonic. And in other words, they set the bomb up, everything's ready, it's all armed, ready to go. And I have been told that on these test sites they've got mirrors on the sun, and they're calculating sun angle position instantly all the time. And as soon as the sun comes into position, it's passing through that point on its sort of spiral around the Earth. As soon as it goes overhead there, everything goes. It's all triggered off. And that's the final relative motion between the two things that sets that off, that makes everything fly apart. It's all those different motions all mixed up together, and everything comes to bits. So if you think about that logically, it was all right during the last war for Hiroshima and Nagasaki because nobody else knew this. So it didn't matter if one side knew, because they could wait for the time and calculate it all in advance and then do it. But if you've got two sides to know, so the Russians and the Americans and everybody else, well, each side can pre-calculate where a bomb's got to be, when it's going to go off, up to years ahead. So they've got computers going all the time. You can pre-calculate where it's got to go, the time it's got to go, and the whole thing becomes illogical. It's an illogical war. So at that stage, the only thing they could do about it was to stuff submarines with atomic warheads and have them roaming the oceans. So that if one side was stupid enough to start an illogical war like that, well, they could stand off for 2 months, 3 months, or a week, whatever it was, before they could come up with a time and a place to put one of theirs in to the enemy. So the whole thing just didn't work. But they've had those submarines anyway roaming the ocean just in case. But if you, again, read the records, you'll find that actually in the Auckland Star in New Zealand, there was half a page story about these submarines, and they actually cruise from geometry point to geometry point around the oceans. And they've got to be at those points at certain times all the time. Well, if you think logically about that, the reason they have to be at those points is because if you fire a missile, it's got to go through a parabolic curve. So if you've got to hit here, you've got to be here. You can't be just anywhere when you fire it. You've got to be at a certain point so the parabolic arc will make the missile hit the other point at the right time. Again, you have to have precise timing, and I would be one betting that if they started a war, probably most of those missiles would miss, because they wouldn't be accurate enough to get there right at an instant of time to make it go off properly. You'd probably have a lot of duds, I'd say. So what do they do next? They have multi-warhead missiles, and I think the reason for that is not to hit 10 targets at once, to make sure that one of those out of the 10 are going to do the job. So they scatter them. So it appears to me that the whole atomic scare and everything around the world has been used as a political weapon only. They've used that political part of the atomic sort of process to keep the public in order and scare you and say, well, if you don't do, we're going to annihilate you. But ever since I found this out, well, I've had no worries about an atomic war, because I know no one not in his right mind is going to even start something like that. Now they've got to the stage where they've got all the conventional weapons if they want them, so they're going to dismantle now the atomic warheads. And they're doing that now. They never use them, they don't want them. It's just a waste of money. If we knew it, the truth, and probably a lot of that stuff's dummies anyway. They've got enough there to do the job. And so they've seen sense at last and going to get rid of them all. But now we'll go back to Hiroshima. I'll just show you the process for Hiroshima, page 52. This is nothing that amazed me. It's when I published the facts as I knew them in one of the books, I thought it's only going to be a matter of weeks when the book comes out when somebody's going to write to me and say, now what about Hiroshima? How did they do that? And I was a bit worried because I didn't know how to work it out. And mainly because I didn't have the information. What I needed was the exact position of the sun at the time Hiroshima went up. And I couldn't get hold of any tables that told me. And eventually, not too long ago, I've got a friend in the United States, and he sent me computer readouts of every bomb test from 1945 up to 1989. I've got the whole series with the time position, sun position and everything. So I eventually got hold of the actual position of the sun for Hiroshima. And as you see there, when you work it out, well, the distance from the sun to Hiroshima at the time of detonation was at 3361 point so-and-so minutes of arc. Now you do that process again with a 6 to hit the harmonic, and the square root of that, which is the same process you do in the unified equation when you take the square root to get 2694444, which is the answer to the unified equation. In other words, I'd better write on a button. And the actual, if you take this from this point to that point, which actually is a part of a great circle, I've just shown it as a straight line there, just diagrammatically. Well, that one gives you 16944, the old figure again. That's the harmonic that's right on the middle of the table between the electromagnetic situation of the Earth and gravity. The vertical one gives you 26944. I'm not quite sure how that works. I haven't come across that. It's strange, but the actual 26944 figure is there. So at last I found out just how they did Hiroshima. I've tried Nagasaki. That's a bit of a confusing one because those two bombs are two different bombs. One was plutonium and the other one was uranium. And Hiroshima one came out fairly well. I've got calculations for the Nagasaki one, but they're a bit confusing yet. I'm waiting till I've got a bit more information. But I know I'll crack that one too eventually. I've also checked the first bomb test in Alamogordo, and the harmonics are showing up there, which they have to be anyway. But, that one, is a wee bit different to this one. This is a straightforward one to work out. But there's so many parameters. The unified equation can be set up in so many different ways geometrically. And I only know just enough to know the secret. And in the early days, they were trying to get me to do all sorts of calculations of bomb tests, and I missed a few. And I knew I was getting into dangerous ground because if I did that too many times, all my credibility would go. All I knew was how to do it. And so I've left it alone. I say, well, if you want to check me, well, what you have to do is wait till I have a bomb test and get the tables out, find where the sun was so you can get the sun tables and work it out. And you'll see for yourself. It's easy to work backwards, but it's pretty hard to work forwards and predict if you don't know all the different combinations and permutations they can use to let a bomb off. And that's again, I suppose, why they have so many bomb tests, because they have to find out that themselves and find out just how far away you have to be from the actual point before one go off. There must be a sort of a area where it's a sort of a grey area. I think if you're a wee bit off the actual exact point, you'll probably get a dirty bomb and you'll only get a bit of it going off and the rest goes up into fallout. So that's the way they have to do a bomb. But just again to prove a point, we put on 53. Now this is part of those tables I was sent from the States, and these are the readouts from the computer of all the bomb tests in this particular time. This one on 53 is from 31st of January 84 up to the 20th of December 85. Now, if any of you have got a copy of my last book, The Bridge to Infinity, you'll find on the cover harmonic 371244. Now that's just one reciprocal that you can establish from the unified equation. So 26944 has got 371 something. And that one was 371244 is the reciprocal of the unified equation just for one value of the speed of light. Now if you look here, this is the actual latitude in Nevada of all the test sites. Now, if you check down, you'll see these 371 figures. Here's one there, 372, 37124. Now, in the front of my book, it's 371244. It's a bit more accurate. And the actual bombs are being detonated on the test site, just straddling that harmonic, back and forth. And there's pages of that all in the bar to test. If you put on. So if you actually check the bomb test grounds, you'll find that these harmonics are there, and they're sort of straddling the harmonics to see, I think, how far they can go either way before they don't get any results. And testing different types of bomb geometrics and all sorts of things. So never fear an atomic war, it won't happen. In one of my books, I put a little bit about space signals that were coming in 1928. They were Van der Pol and Marconi and around that period. They intercepted signals coming in from space, and I think Tesla said that he was receiving signals from Mars at the time. Well, those signals were coming in on 31.4 metres, and using the conversion value I was using at that time of 6080 feet per minute per arc, well, when I converted it, I got around 16944, and but since now that I know that conversion value of 6076, I reworked it, and found, as you see there, if I use 31.406 metres, they probably couldn't read it that accurate at the time. Well, it comes back to the gravity figure on the tables, so I'm pretty sure that was the actual one. Again, there's no absolute proof, but it looks fairly likely, I think, that logically, I think if you wanted to send signals out into deep space, you'd use the gravitational harmonic because it permeates all space. And it would be the logical wavelength to use for space transmission. And if you check the moon values and all the other things, and I've actually checked a lot of transmitters on the ground that the scientists are actually transmitting from, the transmitters are built to 16944. We've got one in New Zealand that's right on the button, and the latitude and longitude of the station gives you harmonics of 16944, so it appears that that is definitely a communications wavelength they use. And again, if we go right back to ancient days, and I showed you yesterday the Chinese pyramids at Shenzhen, and you check the displacement of that one against the Great Pyramid, the distance between the two geometrically is 16944 minutes of arc, ran the long way. And Chinese and don't know who built the pyramids because it's before Chinese history, and I think their history goes back 5,000 years or around about, and the pyramids were there before then. So who knew way back in those days this advanced science, because they had to know to place all these things so accurately in the past. So it's obvious, I think, that way back in ancient times, this science that we're using today has been known by the people in those days. If they knew it, they had space travel. Must have. Because this is the knowledge that gives you space travel. So again, there's something there to look at. We'll do number 58. This is just something I picked up in the paper before I came over here. And they're now getting ready to build one of the biggest atom smashers in the world in the States, Texas. They call it a super collider. It will be 85 kilometres underground loop. A tunnel 3 metres in diameter with a ring of magnets that will smash proton beams with 20 times the force of the world's powerful atoms accelerator. So I just did a quick exercise on it. This is what we're looking at, that 85 kilometres. That's the bit that interests me. The actual circular measurement of when they put these beams around the circle at high speed and then collide them with each other. What they're doing in aerospace is they actually put one beam around one way, one beam around the other way. Well, when they hit, you're getting the effect of matter hitting antimatter, because they're both going different directions and all the parameters are one against the other. So we come back to that matter-antimatter cycle, only they're doing it mechanically. And naturally, when they hit each other, and one's an antimatter, one's a proton, one's a positron, well, they they annihilate each other, and then they count all the bits and find out what each one is. They call them quarks and all sorts of things, and mesons, not mesons, they've got different names for them. But I don't think they're really finding it individual particles at all. I think they're just busting it up and really getting random bits. Because the more they do it, the less there seems to be there. They're getting towards a stage where they're admitting now there's nothing there. It's only a wave, and they're just busting the wave up. There's no particle really at all. It's just just a quantum of energy, just a little wave packets that they're busting up. But anyway, if we take that 85 kilometres, number 59, and if we just corrected that slightly to 84.99, they'd call it just 85 kilometres. This is a round number. If I had to bet on it, I'd say that's the actual measurement of the place when they built it. We can do that again, the old exercise, and come back to 169444 again. I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. And we'll see there, again, that's pi by phi over 3, which is a geometric out of textbooks. So all this is going on. The scientists know. There's no doubt about it. Number 60. I think I might have mentioned yesterday about Tesla. He said that the actual resonance frequency of the Earth was 1 hour and 40 minutes. Did we say that? Didn't. For what Tesla, by experiment, he found that if the Earth was resonated, the actual wave harmonic was 1 hour 49 minutes. So whatever the plausibility of his Earth-splitting scheme, the rather precise estimate of the Earth frequency turned out to be close to the mark. As was demonstrated you in the Great Chilean Earthquake. And when they have an earthquake, they can test these different measurements, and they found it was pretty right. So just out of curiosity, what I did, I divided that 1 hour 49 minutes into 1 year in time to see what I'd get. And the number I got when I divided one into the other was 4825.321. Now if you take a screw to that, you get 69464. And if you correct that to bring it to 6944 and work backwards, well, it'll come to 1 hour 49 minutes and 3 seconds. So that's pretty well right on it. So that showed me that our term of 365 and a quarter days has always been there. There's been books written and arguments and everything for years and years that we used to have 360 days, and then we got collided with an asteroid or something and we got slowed up, and the Earth has now only got 365 days, or it's got extra 5 days plus. Well, I don't believe that now, because the calculator, according to Tesla, shows that the actual spin of the Earth is actually tuned to the harmonic reciprocal of light. That's the generator. It's the light effect that generates the actual revolutions of the Earth. So we've got another little piece of evidence here that helps. What I'm showing you this morning is all different ways and places where these harmonics are being used, or they can pop up. And, what I'm trying to do is to show you so many different things that it appears that chance is not involved. It gets past the point where it's just chance. There's something more behind it. This is another little bit of information I got hold of. In Russia, they've got this radar way out in Siberia somewhere in Krasnoyarsk. So I looked up my times index book. We put on 62 now. What I wanted to do was find out the actual latitude and longitude of that station, wisely out there. And just out of curiosity again, just to see if there's anything there. Every now and then I'll just pick up a thing like this and put it in the computer just to see what I get. And every now and then I pick something up. So this is just the rough calculations. And you'll see that a figure comes up again, the gravity figure, 143791. And if you take the latitude, 45, where the thing is, well, you get that 25455844 again, which is built into the polar squares. And there's a reciprocal of the difference of the Earth's magnetic fields. So that's, again, tuned in. And it's built there purposely to give that radar more effect and perfect it. So I'd say that's not the only radar station that's plastered around the world that's actually built in and using these harmonics. They get better results and more perfect transmission, and more reception, better reception. Okay. Have any of you heard about they call it the catastrophe of Kistum? This is another small town in Russia. This leaked out. There was a scientist that was in the area, and he knew what had happened there, and then he went to England eventually years later, and he told the story, and it got into the newspapers. And evidently at Kistum they had an atomic plant of some sort, and they dumped great big heaps of waste all around the place. And then they had a massive explosion, and they devastated the whole area. It's about 30 miles. It's all locked off now. You can't drive through it, and it's devastated completely. Radioactive, and it'll be like that for maybe hundreds of years. And that's one of 3 or 4 different catastrophes I've had in Russia. It was like Chernobyl, only worse, I think. So nobody knew that it happened years ago, and until it leaked out. So just out of curiosity, again, I checked the position. I thought, well, okay, it must be harmonics in the area. So if we go to page 65. If there's any atomic disruption or atomic explosion or anything like that in any part of the world, you can guarantee, I mean, it has to be logically, that you must be able to find the harmonics there, because that's the only way it could have happened. So I'll just zero in on them each time just to get more evidence of what I'm trying to say. And that's some of the workings of that figure, that area there. And I found, using this type of calculation, that you can calculate, as I said yesterday, a linear measure, square measure, or volume. And you can find that the actual harmonics, you can equate them with volume or square measure just as you can with air. Only to shoot it up and down the harmonic scale, with a linear measure to multiply by 6, with square measure to multiply by 36, with 6 by 6. If it was volume, you'd say multiply or divide by 216, which is 6 by 6 by 6. And so it took me a while to check everything for the area, and I found that if I took that segment from the equator to the latitude where that was, well, that was in the top part. There's the figures there just below. Well, that 143,909 harmonic for the speed of light was in that table I showed you yesterday too. I can show you again if you require it. But the same old values pop up, and I use the same methods of calculation all the time. This is one method of checking everything. They use this quite often in different things. They'll have a position there, and to find the harmonic, you've got to check the difference between the 90-degree points on each side of it. In other words, you've got to take 90 degrees and 180 degrees sometimes, or 0 to 90, that segment, and then take and find out the actual relative difference between these two arcs. Take one from the other, and the difference gives you the answer. And as you see there, 143,791 again, which is the gravity figure. So it's pretty obvious, I think, that they were set up for a good accident. That's just another. That's probably a bit confusing if I haven't gone through the method there. But if we work the back method, sometimes I don't use the direct one. You can take that piece off the great circle and get it from the back one. In that case, it was the back piece, which is the 16165, around the back of the great circle. And if you equated that with the 143830, which is in those tables again, and then feed that into the unified equation, well, you get that value at the bottom, 26943, which is the actual value for that particular speed of light factor when you feed it into the equation. So it's just another little bit of extra proof. This is only just another rough calculation. I've sort of spent an hour or so and I pick these places and have a look at them and just make a rough calculation. When I got what I want, I just chuck it in a file and leave it till I need it for something else. But in Russia, they've actually constructed what they call Science City, again out in Siberia, and they pick their brilliant young people and they send them out to the city, and it's a city of young people, young brilliant students, and they're doing all sorts of things, and even in psychic type of research and everything that's sort of connected with these harmonic things. And I fed it into the computer and see what I can find. And again, you see up there, 254558 and 143791. They've actually built the city right where those harmonics are. They're tuning into the stuff. So there's nothing new. Everything I've found, there's nothing new. So I'm just sort of carrying along on their coattails, just wondering what they're up to. So that's mainly what I want to show you this morning, just over those bits. I've got one thing left. It's when I show you this, I'll show you the actual facts, but I won't try and analyse. I'll leave that to you. It'll be very controversial, but there's something there I think will eventually has to be known. This traces back to 1100, and it shows that this knowledge again was known way back in at least 1100. Basically, we're talking about a place in the south of France called Rennes-les-Bains. I'm not sure that's how you pronounce it. Can't speak French, but the basic story is that quite a while ago, a young priest was sent to this area in the church at Rennes-le-Château, and he wasn't there for very long, and then suddenly he decided he was going to refurbish the church and started pulling at the bits on the inside, and he found some documents, and the Vatican come in on the scene, and not very long from then this young priest suddenly became very rich, and he seemed to have money coming from all directions, and nobody knew why and what was going on there. And but he stayed in the area, and he used to visit another priest at Rennes-les-Bains, which is about 3 miles away in the valley, and then he suddenly began getting connections with high society, and there were all sorts of strange things about this guy. But there was quite a few stories about the area itself. During the war, Hitler sent miners into that area, and they were digging holes all over the place trying to find knowledge. And evidently it was the headquarters of the Knights Templars, and this traces back to 1100 when the Templars first come into the area and set up their headquarters there. And the story is that the Holy Grail is buried there, or something to do with the Holy Grail or knowledge. And these people that wrote the book there, they seem to think it's not so much buried treasure or anything, it's knowledge of some sort. And plus they say that if this knowledge got out, well, it will be very dangerous for the Catholic Church, and there's something that the churches don't want to be known. So I got a bit curious about it. I had a look around the place, and at first I couldn't find much, but then through the post I was sent a book that was compiled by David Wood in England. Now, David was, during the war, a photographer and map maker, and worked for the army, I think it was. And after the war he started up his own business in map making, surveying, and he's a very sort of brilliant man in that area. And he'd read about this place too, and so he decided to go down there, take all his surveying equipment and survey the place. And to put on number 68 now. This is one page out of his book. It's all in colour. Actually, it's a beautiful book. It's well done. And this is one of his surveys. And he found on that bottom circle, when he surveyed it, all the churches around the perimeter of that circle, all very well laid out. The top circle is 6 miles in diameter, and from Rennes-les-Bains to the Chateau is exactly 3 British miles. And they reckon, in the story and everything, that this position had something to do with Jesus. And this is what the churches didn't want to be known. There's some connection there somewhere. So, being curious again, I used the values in the diagrams out of David's book, and again turned his measurements into geometrics to find out what was there. And if we put on number 69, I found that if I took a great circle from Rennes-le-Château through Rennes-les-Bains and just carried it on, I found out where it went. And it went straight to Bethlehem on the computer. And that's it. The figures that popped up. I can't tell you why. I can't analyse it, but it's a fact. And then when I checked the position of Bethlehem, what I've done there, I put it in the computer, and I've got these programs specially made now that I can swap from normal Earth latitude and longitude into grid latitude, the energy group. And what I want you to note is the longitude here of Bethlehem on the energy grid. Not normal latitude and longitude, this is energy grid latitude and longitude. And note that actual value. It's 143.860909 degrees. Now, if we go back to that table again, that top line table that we had before, this is the conversion values at the equator from that big table. And as I said yesterday, we always read that top line because of relativity, because as you go down and the values change, gravity changes, the speed of light changes, your instruments change with it, and time and everything. So you always read the top line. But this is what I want you to look at. That value, that's the speed of light in the air on the table. Now, if we did the same exercise with the latitude, well, if we took the difference in latitude from the position up to the North Pole and the position down to the equator and took one to the other in the same sort of exercise, we get a value which will give us 269.486. Now, that's the actual value you'd get if you fed the speed of light in the air into the unified equation and got the answer. So latitude and longitude is connected directly with the speed of light. And so I can't analyse it for you, I've just given you the figures. I'll let you work that one out for yourself. So there is obviously a connection between the Rennes-le-Château and Bethlehem and Jesus for some reason, I don't know why. What the answer is, I don't know. But this is just the first calculations, and David Wood and I, he's busy now in England redoing all his calculations and survey. I said I want some accurate figures, and I'm waiting now to get his very, very accurate figures of these churches and all that there, so that I can put it back into the computer and get the absolute accurate figures. And if I can get that all done, I'll put what I can find into the next book again. There's a lot of people trying to hide the facts, but I still believe that truth is truth, and if there's something there, well, we should know about it. Have you ever looked at the old maps? Old, what I call them, Tomley maps? Columbus used some of these in his voyages, and there was a book brought out by Charles Hapgood, and he got his university classes to help him analyse some of these old maps. And they put all the parameters into the computers, and they were trying to find out how they produced these maps. You've probably seen copies of them in the shops, and you can get books of these old ancient maps. And they haven't been produced the same way as we do our maps today. We do our maps and we got proper grids to them, but in those old maps, they were in great big circles and sort of interlocking with each other. But when they found out, and they had to really analyse these things, because it was difficult to find out where the actual centre of these circles were. But they found one particular one that takes the centre there and projected out, and then they had the circle around, and then they cut it up. Cut it up into squares this way. And they produced pretty accurate maps that way. But the thing that caught my eye in the book is the fact that the actual distance from the centre of there to the outside of the circle on their maps was 69.5 degrees. So it seems funny to come up again, but that's been published by somebody else. So they knew something. They actually started producing their maps using those harmonics. that's a fact.
Have to take a break there, Bruce.
Sure.
You've got a 25-minute tea break. Just help yourself to morning and teas and biscuits, etc. Go outside to get some fresh air.
So, just before we have the questions, I'll just do two other little things. I can show you how this is being used. How many there have got my fourth book, Bridge to Infinity? Do you remember I put a chapter in there and said it'd be a good place to put a free energy power station? Did anybody ever check where that was? Now, in that book, I gave you the position which would be a good place to put a free energy station. And there are only 8 of these positions in the whole world. There are 4 in the northern hemisphere and 4 in the south. Now, 3 of those positions in the northern hemisphere are on land and 1 in the sea. In the southern hemisphere, 3 are in the sea and only 1 on land. And that position is in New Zealand. And I didn't say what it was, I just told you where it could be. And nobody's ever contacted me and said they actually checked it. So you look at that, and that's the position. And that would be a good place, I say, to put a Tesla station. In other words, a station that you can actually resonate the whole world. And then you can, once you've resonated, as Tesla found out, you get, what happens, as I say, I'm not a technician, but from what I've been able to grasp from this, as I said, when it rains, every time a raindrop hits the ground, it splits and it imparts a static charge to the earth. So if you imagine all those trillions and trillions and trillions of raindrops and all the other activity that goes on in lightning and weather, the earth itself is a big ball of energy. You're standing on it, millions and trillions of electron volts. And now that's static, and you can't use it because it's not moving. It's just charged like a battery before you hook it up. And what you have to do, you have to put a station like Tesla did. And you've got to transmit from there, and it's Earth, and you oscillate energy at that harmonic point. Now Tesla knew all this, because the points he picked were these harmonic values. And once you start oscillating, you actually set up a standing wave that oscillates from there, goes back to there, and bounces back and starts back this way, and it oscillates back and forth, and then sets up, and it's sort of got a wave motion right through there. Once you've done that, to pick it off, all you've got to do is put a ground aerial in anywhere in the earth going. You can go into the middle of a jungle in Brazil and put your probe in the ground, feed it through a little box like a radio, and then transmit it back out into the atmosphere again. And it's a full cycle. So you electrify the whole world in one go. And to do that effectively, you would need, say, if you could, have 4 of those stations in the northern hemisphere on those really good points, and 4 of them in the south. As I say, only 1 of those in the south fits on land, and that's us, New Zealand. And there's 3 of them in the north, but eventually they'll have the technology to put those other 3 on the seabed, so that they can have 8 of those stations pulsating, electrifying the whole world. And if they want maintenance, they can take 2 out, leave the other 4 going. They could even run 1 and it'll work, but it'd be a better operation. You'd need to be pumping more power than if you had 8 of them all pumping together. But the actual power you'd have to pump in would be negligible to the power that's available once you've got it all oscillating and it's all there. And they've known that for years and years and years. And we don't need oil. You're standing on unlimited energy, and it'll never run out. So that's one thing. And that area will give you those numbers. Now, if we go to number 34, there's all sorts of things this comes into. You know, we talk about temperature. Our frequency and temperature are interrelated. The higher the temperature, the higher the frequency. And that's when it starts to glow. You put a bit of piece of iron on the fire, it's cold, you bring the rate up, the temperature goes up, it starts to grow, the frequency rate goes up. Now, I base my temperature scale on water, which is the most abundant compound in the universe, I think. And luckily, we use centigrade system for the freezing point and boiling point of water, which gives us 100 degrees, which is a good base to fit into my stuff. Because all my values are based on 10. Now, if we then look at the textbooks, if you see the bottle, if we use Kelvin, which is the same as centigrade, absolute zero, as far as I can measure it with their instruments, is minus 273.15 degrees. Well, now I'm going to talk theoretical now. I can't prove this, but theoretically it makes sense. If we could calculate absolute zero before it goes up the other side into antimatter and the anti-universe and all the anti-bits, well, I'd say that the peak at the bottom there would be minus 274 degrees. Okay, now we go to the top half. Now, if we take from the freezing point, the boiling point of water up to the critical temperature of water, well, it is also plus 274 plus 14 they can measure. Well, I say it's plus 274 from the boiling point of water. Now, if you add all that together and take from absolute zero to the critical temperature of water, you get a value of 648, which is just about right on the textbook figures anyway. So if you take the square root of 648, you get 25455844 again, which is built into the grid system as I've shown you before. So the whole temperature range, if you use Kelvin and you rearrange the temperature fractionally on all the instruments, well, you can tune temperature-wise all the experiments you do. This is what the alchemists tried to do. They used to cook this stuff over and over and over and over again, hoping for a result. They're trying to do it by trial and error. Well, knowing all this and putting it all together, you can actually pick your temperatures, and I'll show you later how it goes into elements. The atomic weight of all the elements, they're all harmonic in steps. And you'll find that the scientists, when they're using elements for certain things, they pick the element which will give you the harmonic that fits. And just one instance, the moonshots, they use lithium batteries. And if you look up the atomic table in your physics book, you'll find that the atomic weight of lithium, the one they use is 6.94, which is a reciprocal at the speed of light. So, which makes a lithium battery very, very effective, and one of the best batteries you can use. And we've found, as I say, I've got a direct connection with scientists now, and we're hoping to use some of this information into doing other things. You can pick elements for certain things. And once you know all the secrets of the harmonics, there's unlimited things you can do electronically, and building things, and all sorts of technology. So this is just another little thing that sort of fits into the theories. But as I say, I can't prove it, but that fractional difference, I think it's right. It's just about there anyway. As I say, that place there that would be a good place for a power station, the actual geometric, that one point alone, and I'd say there's only 8 of them in the whole world, gives you the answer to the reciprocal of the unified equation, and also that 16944 harmonic, which tunes you in both sides, the electromagnetic at one end and the gravity in the other. So you've got everything all tied up, and you've got to pick those points. The atom bomb is also tuned to that type of thing. Now, I won't go too far into it, but Einstein states that the whole of physical reality is manifested by the geometrics of space and time. That's Einstein's statement. Now, if you take that logically, if you want to disrupt matter or destroy it, you have to set up a proposition which is in reverse, which is geometric. That's the only way you can do it. And this is the secret of the bomb. They have to construct it geometrically, put it over a geometric position and wait for the right time. And they all got to fit before it'll go off. But we won't go into that too far, but that's just a hint.
In one of your books, you refer to the natural grid system and the grid system that was being changed, and you put 5 possible reasons why you thought at that time that it might be being changed. And one of them was the UFOs may have been using it for their purposes. Mm-hmm. And coincidentally, at the same time as I read your book, which was about 1977, I was dealing with somebody with, we were working with extraterrestrial information, and the book that we were writing, this particular person was writing, we were working with, had exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. that of the grid system, but from a totally different source. And of course, it said that the UFOs were adjusting the harmonics and adjusting the grid system for their own, as it were, time travel and so on, as we know. Have you come to any conclusion about that?
Yeah. So actually, I corrected that statement in my other books, my later books. In the beginning, I did think that the grid system was artificial because I was finding gear that was in the grid system, and I thought that they were producing the grid system. And as time went on, I realised that the scientists were not making the grid, and the other UFOs were not making the grid. They were actually building the gear into a natural system. And the system itself is natural. And I'll show you how I believe is sort of put together. We come back to those two electromagnetic fields of the Earth, where we taught there's only one, but those two interlock with each other. And I gave this analogy in one of my books, I think. If you imagine a machine-wound ball of string, now it's made out of one piece of string, but you look at that machine-wound ball of string after it's completed, and you find that it's got a pattern on it like this. See the idea? Now, if you imagine that one piece of string is one magnetic line of force is one, and then multiply that by trillions, well, that's the grid. I say we're taught in schools that the actual field of the Earth comes through like that, passes through. You've got north and south up there and it goes like that. Well, I can't prove it, but I say it goes like this. It actually comes through and loops around, goes like that. And you've got the other one coming in, comes through, loops around and comes out there, like that. And when they cross and all those trillions and trillions of points, you get a vortex and atomic structures built up. So I said earlier that I had contact with a intelligence officer, and one day he was questioning me about what I thought, and I said, he said, what do you think magnetic field is? And I think it's unmade matter. And he immediately latched onto it and said, what made you say that? And it excited him that I'd sort of latched onto it. And I said, well, it seems logical that a magnetic field, ignore most fields, it's up in there when you put two magnets together. It's the pressure there, it's something solid there, but it's cushy. But if you imagine that if there was two fields and they're interlocking and you're getting a whirlpool action, what you're doing, when it all boils down, there's no matter anywhere, all you've got is a lot of waveforms. And the magnetic field actually is the two fields that make matter. In other words, it's just a little wee energy field. And when I talk about quantums, they say it's a little wave packet. There's no matter there, it's just a wave packet, or quantum of energy. And a photon is only a wave packet. So I believe that our whole of reality is like a hologram. There's nothing really concrete there at all. We live in a world of unreality. It's all an illusion. But why things appear solid to you is that they're resonating at the same frequency rate. And it's like two north poles, you're trying to push them together, they won't go through each other. So you take that to extreme, and then something feels solid to you, or other material feels soft to you, and then it gets softer, and then you can put your hand through water. But it's still solid. And then eventually you get steam, and then vapour, and go, and then it dissipates into just waveforms again if you go higher and higher up the scale. So there's no reality really as you believe it to be. And this is how, again, a UFO works, because it's only working with waveforms. And you're only shifting one lot of waveforms to another part of waveforms. That's, okay, does that answer you?
Bruce, my name is Lee McGiffin. I've been following your books and work for a number of years now, and from what you've presented here today, I'd like to explore the basis for a lot of your harmonics, when you said that you found that some of the harmonics derived from the addition of subtraction of two of the values, which were the Earth's magnetic field values. My question is, what are the dimensions of this, these two magnetic fields? Is it in Gauss, or is it a frequency, or what?
It's in Gauss, I think.
Is it Gauss, is
yeah,
it?
The actual number of lines per square centimetre. I think that's Gauss.
Because I was thinking if it was frequency, then the addition of the frequencies and the subtraction of the frequencies would make sense in terms of radio theory of superheterodyning.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I'm talking harmonics, where everything is tuned to everything else.
How do you explain then the fact that some of the units you use are in one dimension, then adding them together or subtracting them produces units of a different dimension? How can you get around that?
In the whole theory, we're talking about linear measure, we're talking about square measure, and we're talking about cubic measure. Now, you'll find when you delve into this that you can actually harmonically tune areas to linear measure and linear measure to cubic measure under the same rules. Just by, if you're using linear measure, all you use is 6 for your multiplier or divider. If it's square measure, you use 36. And if it's cube, you use 216. And this is, I can see exactly what you're getting at because I had the same problem. I had to think about it. Now, why does it fit? And the only thing at this stage is that I'm taking an area of that field. In other words, a square geodetic against which fits my work. And if you're thinking electromagnetically in waveform, well, then you'd have to use it in a different way. Fair enough. But I can't answer you fully. All I can say is at this stage, it all fits. And I'm not a technician or electronics expert, so I can't give you an expert's electronic answer. But it does fit because I'm using area. Okay?
Could you explain, it's not so much in the forefront now, pyramids seem to have a function of splitting up electromagnetism, magnetism, etc. Have you figured out any harmonics for the dealing of light and magnetism as far as pyramids are concerned?
Yeah, we come back to that 16944 figure. If we just talk about pyramids. Now, if you go the Western world, how many of you in the room here right now know that there are pyramids in China and where they are? Quite a few. And most of the Western world, I'd say probably 90% of the Western world don't even know they exist. And up Shensi, and the biggest one is over twice as high as the Great Pyramid in Egypt. It's about 1,200 feet high, and the one in Egypt is 486. And it's a monstrous thing. But there are, I was given a satellite map in the United States, what's produced by the American Air Force. And the map's very accurate. And I've got the map of the Shensi area there, and it's got 16 pyramids on the map. So I could get very, very accurate positions off the map. And I checked the Chinese pyramids against the one in Egypt there. And apart from the direct great circle tracks between each pyramid, the actual, if you've got the Egyptian pyramid there and the ones in China there, if you measure the distance, it's about 77.6 degrees displaced. If you measure the distance around that way in minutes of arc, it's 1,6,9,4,4 minutes of arc displacement. Now you tell me that's an accident. Who built them? The Chinese don't even know who built the pyramids in there. It goes before their history. But they are displaced 1,6,9,4,4 minutes of arc, which fits right into all those tables I showed you and all my work and all my books. And the actual height of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid above the base is 16944 or 16944 pyramid inches or something. The chamber in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid, if you check it, measurements, I've got the old books and the more modern pyramid books. I've taken a lot of these measurements out, hidden them away, but you get the early editions. I've got one in 1918 something edition. And you find for the King's Chamber, just rough figures, it's 111 point something pyramid inches wide and 205, 80 or something, 205.8 pyramid inches. Now we're getting right on to 4,11636, which is squared to get 16944. So the King's Chamber is a cavity resonator tuned to those harmonics, and the height of it's tuned to those harmonics. The position of it to other pyramids is tuned to it harmonically, 16944. And that cannot be broken, it's a fact. You can get the positions and check it on your computer, it's a fact. So this technology is not new. I say everything I found here is just, I'm just on a threshold of it. The ancients had all this stuff. And there's always been a group right from ancient times that have had this technology, or the knowledge, but they've never had the technology to go with it. So in our day, we've got our technology back and we're getting more and more advanced technology. So they're now in the position where they can start using the knowledge and creating the stuff to go with it. But those people have always been here. And you look back through all history, the people who had the power and who ran things all the time were the high priests, or all those groups, and or the secret societies, all those people. And the general public have never known the truth, they've never been told. But all the time behind the scenes you've been being manipulated by people with this superior knowledge all the time. And the ones we've come up against, I don't say they're all like this, but the ones that I've had particular contact with, the last meeting I told you we were taken to, I actually ended up calling the guy a Nazi. Because I asked him the question when he was trying to pummel me, I said, well, who's telling me? And I asked the question, I said, what about the moral implications of what you guys are doing? And he just looked down at me and he said, we don't worry about morals. We do what's the word? Yeah, something had it. Expedient, yeah. We do what's expedient. And I said, that's what the Nazis told us after the last war. I said, you're a Nazi. And that guy was one of their people. And they're amongst us, and they're operating now. And I said, in other words, if there was people in your way, would you kill them or get them in the way? He said, oh, yeah. And they're walking around now. They're our people.
Bruce, I'd just like to say it's good to see you, Bruce, and looking so well there. I grew up reading your books and ran around my local suburbs looking for particular antenna constructs in the first books. Didn't find any, but still curious about them. I was just wondering if there was any truth in the stories I heard about your books being shredded originally.
Yeah, that's true.
And for what reasons?
They won't give a reason. That story, I signed a contract for 32 countries, a world contract, with an overseas publisher, and for paperbacks, my first 3 books. And 13,000 copies of those 3 books were taken into New Zealand by one of the major publishers there. I think they've been there about 3 months. I used to go over occasionally and buy 3 or 4 books myself, for people who wrote to me for books. And probably about a trip once a week or so. And one afternoon I went over there and there were 2 books on the shelf. And I was trying to find, I want a dozen books. And they hummed and hawed and flustered around, and it took me half an hour going from department to department before I got onto some of them. I demanded to see the manager, and I said, what's going on here? And eventually I got to one of the under managers that had taken over from the chap who had actually imported the stuff. He'd been sacked for some reason. And he just sat beside his desk and I said, well, where are all these books? And he just laughed. He said, I shredded them. He laughed at me. I said, you're kidding. And he said, no, all shredded. And possibly about 11,000 books. Now, those books then were worth about $7 or $8 each, I think. That's a lot of money.
And there was no official reason?
No, I tried to, nobody else had talked to me. And over the next few weeks I wrote letters to the manager of the company and the under manager who had been there, and I couldn't get any sense out of them. Nobody had answered it. So in the end I wrote to the crowd in England. This is quite a long time after, when I thought I'll have another go. And they said, oh, the people who are doing that, they're all gone there, and we can't give you any answers, and sort of flustered me off. So nobody had admit or say who gave the order to destroy the books. And since then, none of the major publishers will touch my material. I can't get a publisher. So whatever I've got hold of, nobody likes it. And that's why you don't see my books around, because nobody will do them. But maybe we've got a chap that will.
Bruce, I've got a question for you. I know in discussions with you, we've discussed different ancient mystery sites on the grid system around the planet, and I was wondering how much research you've done on modern installations. I know you mentioned Pine Gap yesterday, but I wondered if you'd done much research that you're prepared to discuss about places like the Pentagon or Parliament House in Canberra, or if you've turned up any other interesting places on the grid system.
Yep, definitely. But I make a point of not naming anything particularly, because you can go to probably the major countries in the world, and you'll find certain gear that the scientists are using or experimenting with that's got some bearing on this. And this is another way I check what I'm doing. I didn't know this until I found a certain amount, a few years gone by. And then, just out of curiosity, I thought, well, I'm sure that these guys know. So I started picking certain places and having a look at them. And I found, geez, I did know. obvious when you start checking things that there are certain installations around the world that are built bang on those harmonic values. And in America, yes, I have checked them. And they are built on certain positions. Actually, I won't name the place, but there's one particular place, say it's there, and there's grid poles there and south grid pole there. Now the coordinate from there to there, you get 41.1, call it 636, square that you get 16944. And the coordinate to there is 833.333 minutes. Square that is 69444. And that's one of the major places in the world. And it's a scientific place. But that's not the only one. There's things like that all over the place. So well positioned that it can't be an accident that these guys know. But there's... I could probably fill 2 pages of places I've checked that they're on it. They know. If what I was finding was not right, or nearly right, or getting near it, I would never have been visited by some of these guys trying to talk me around and joining them and trying to pay me lots of money to shut up. I've been tempted. It took me 2 days to turn down the last one, but I like to think about it, you know, and when they tell you you can be a multi-millionaire, well, it's hard to turn it down. But I couldn't live like that. I could use the money. I could use $1 million tomorrow with the things I want to do and try and invent and stuff. But if you have to you live under their rules, no way. Money's worth nothing to you. Once they've got you, boy, you're in it. No, that's a fact. You might like it for a year or so, but after that, no way. Yeah.
Okay. That's it for Bruce Cathie for the conference, so please give him a very warm round of applause.